since last night as well. There's about 8,000 people, give or take, without power in parts of Florida. That's pretty good, considering that we thought this was going to be such a much more serious situation for Florida. So the crews are out. They're on the ground. They're getting the power restored as quickly as they can. Hang on one second. Let me turn my mic or my speaker off. Okay, there we go. I always like to leave my speaker on just so I can hear you and make sure I've got audio for you guys. But anyway, so the crews are out there. If you know someone that's without power, if you don't have power, you're probably not watching me. But if you are, unless you're on your phone, but if you are without power or someone you know is without power, the crews have been really good. The power outages have been fluctuating from anywhere from about 2,000. It started last night around 7 o'clock when Volusia County got a big band of heavy rain and wind, and then it's kind of jumped and oscillated between 2,000 and 8,000. So most of Florida is starting to look a lot better, you guys. I mean, the worst of the weather, I think, for the most part, is done for the state of Florida. So I can see the trend here, some of these powerful rain bands pulling away from Florida. Now, we still have some. This is going to rotate down across parts of northeast Florida, and that's going to clip parts of the Jacksonville area, already seeing it just right at the coast, and then down into Flagler County and Volusia County. So we still have some of these outer bands that are going to be impacting parts of Florida. And we will see that throughout the day today. But the bulk of the heavy weather that I was worried about this morning looks to be trending away. And that's because Dorian is moving towards the northwest. And I see a trend on radar where it's actually moving a little bit more towards the north. So we might see that official turn from the Hurricane Center later this morning. We'll see. But definitely an elongated and ragged looking hurricane. Winds are still 105, you guys. This is nothing to mess around with. And this is kind of a rudimentary look. This is not the actual center of circulation. The actual core winds are around of the eye are around 35 miles in diameter, but look how large the outer features of this outer eye wall are. They're about 60 miles across. So it's definitely a disorganized and ragged looking hurricane, but it created some nasty weather through parts of Volusia County last night. This was sent to us on Twitter. One of our users sent this to us. And you can, if you watch the clouds closely, you can kind of see that jet kind of picking those storms and just rotating in them quickly. Volusia County, as I mentioned, got a fair amount of wind last night, and I anticipate to see more of that as we head through later today through northeastern Florida and especially into the Carolinas. Now, here's another picture. If you look at the sand there, kind of coming in from the, we're getting some inflow there, and I guess it looks like my buddy Matt's back on deck. So anyway, we're getting some of that those gusty winds at the beaches, and I tell you, the coast of eastern central Florida has been hammered over the last couple of days. So let me do this because I'm not sure. I think you're back there, Matt. But anyway, our production. Oh, he is. Okay. Matt Highland, our production coordinator in here, doing a fantastic job helping me on the scenes, behind the scenes. We both were here late last night and then got in early this morning. Just wanted to make sure we were here if there was any severe weather for Florida. So we were had you covered. Of course, Mike Linden's been doing a great job, and Stephanie Lauber will be in later today as well as Mike. But we wanted to be here just in the event that the events were much more serious. Thankfully, that has not been the case for the state of Florida, so that's all good. All right, so let's look at the infrared. And when I look at an infrared imagery like this would look a lot more like an extra. Let me preface this: a hurricane that's transitioning into an extratropical feature. It will take days for that to happen, but when you see a hurricane like this get elongated and starts to stretch to the up and down and to the sides, it loses the tropical characteristics, which are generally a more compact system. So as I see this elongate and stretch, I'm seeing a less true tropical hurricane. This is still a hurricane. Don't get me wrong. Don't mishear what I'm saying. But I do expect this to transition into a less classic hurricane in a couple of days. We're not there yet. We still have intense wind and rain right here. See those magentas and the blacks? Those are winds of those 105, but usually they're up in here. They're going to rotate back over toward the northeast. So we see the eye itself trying to regenerate and reorganize, but I don't see that happening on the infrared so much, and I haven't seen it on the radar. I saw it last night. I saw the western wall of the eye was actually exposed last night around 5 or 6 p.m., and then after that it actually got its act together and became more circular and more concentric. But concentric banding, you may have heard us talk about that. That happens when these hurricanes are much more organized, where we see a core field of the red. So when we see all of this red, you see here in this inner core, and then there's an outer core of the reds on the outer periphery of the eye wall. So not what we see now, not a classic presentation of a well-organized, just making sure that that everything's good, of a well-organized hurricane. But these bands right in here, you guys, definitely have 105 mile per hour winds, and those will be moving through parts of, whoop, it did it again. I got to fix this map. So, and we'll see those move into Georgia and the Carolinas in the next day. So here's the max gust winds within this last hour. So Melbourne has a gust of 37 miles an hour, Orlando 28, 25 in Jacksonville. That's not a big deal, right? Severe thunderstorms are around 58 miles an hour, but we've had some decent squalls. I actually saw some debris when I came in this morning here in Orlando. So I know there's some minor damage in Florida interior. I know the coast is a much different scenario. They really have been pounded, and I've seen some beach erosion video this morning over at the coast. So I know it's been a really serious situation over along east side in the state of Florida. Here's a look at the watches and warnings. These didn't change too much from overnight, except the hurricane warning has now been extended to include all of South Carolina and a bit of North Carolina. And we've seen tropical storm warnings go up that were once hurricane warnings down in Florida from pretty much Brevard County south. So we're seeing those change, and I expect to see the tropical storm warnings drop here shortly for the interior part of the state. As of 9 o'clock this morning, no change in the wind, 105 miles an hour, north-northwest at 8, pressure 964. The pressure, the coordinates are 29.6 north, 79.6 west. And I say those to you because I've got some folks that have been tracking hurricanes for a long time, and they like to hear the coordinates because they actually still track them on maps. We actually used maps, guys, paper, to track hurricanes back in the day. All right, here's a look at the path. Again, very close to North Carolina. I think I've mentioned this yesterday. Of all the states that are going to get the biggest chunk of Dorian in the United States, I think it's going to be North Carolina and South Carolina. Florida has done very well, much better than we initially thought. But the Carolinas, in terms of wind and surge, I think it's going to be the most for those two states. And then, and I'll show you that in a second. And then here's a look at that path that rapidly scoots it off the coast of the U.S. by Friday night and into Saturday. Most of the mainland United States should be done with this hurricane. Last 24 hours, watch the eye. Watch how it elongates and gets ragged, and the banding features that I talked about, where you see all those thunderstorms wrap around the center. We've seen some of the imagery where it's trying to do that, and we're seeing that this morning a bit, but all of that is offshore. And again, because it's moving towards the northwest, that's great news for Florida, not so great for Georgia and the Carolinas, because I think you guys, originally we thought this was going to curve a little further away. I think it's going to get closer to you than originally forecast, and that does mean a change in the storm surge. So here's a look at the storm surge. It's along the coastal parts of Central and North Florida into Georgia and up into South Carolina. That storm surge, I do believe, is going to be worse for parts of the Carolinas than we got here in Florida. Storm surge watch is up for the Barrier Islands and most of North Carolina. That'll switch to a warning once it gets a little further north. So expect that to change. And I do think that you all are going to have a storm surge anywhere from 7 to 9 feet. That product I wanted to show you is currently not working, but I'm going to get it updated and hopefully have it for you at 11. Or shortly thereafter. So here's a look at our model run. This is from 9:25 this morning. This is a little overdone, I think. We're not seeing that type of radar verify. I was just showing you the radar, but we are definitely getting some bands still across Florida, and we'll still continue to see that as we head through the morning. And then Georgia picks up for you guys. Let me just scoot this up. I'm going to switch this over to another product and see how it does, because I think this is overdone, but still it kind of indicates the general trend where we see very close to that eye, which again, right here, could be getting very close to the coast of South Carolina. Definitely going to be very close to North Carolina. Might even technically make a landfall over North Carolina. So that's what we have to see. It might not all encroach over land, but it's kind of like when football players, they just have to get their foot over the end zone. I think this one will be close enough that they might actually, the Hurricane Center might officially call it a landfall. We'll see. So it's definitely going to be close that Carolinas have got to really watch for some of those higher winds that will bring. And even if it doesn't make a landfall, you're still going to get the same surge. You're going to get a bigger surge than Florida got, 7 feet, and maybe even 9 feet. You're also going to get a lot of rain, 4 to 5 inches, and power outages a problem too. Low risk for power outages across Florida. As I mentioned at the top, there's about 8,000 people without power in the state of Florida. I expect that to increase in Georgia and the Carolinas. The biggest risk for the power outages will be in North Carolina, where you will have the biggest winds from Dorian, and that'll be by Thursday. Here's a look at our water vapor, and we've been talking a lot about our trough. Here it is. And no need to really draw things out. You already know it's pulling it northward. It's kind of like a big magnet in the atmosphere, if you will, that kind of draws Dorian north. And it's expected to draw Dorian towards the northeast once it digs even further down towards the south. We've had a lot of local storm reports from the state of Florida as well. Most of them have been wind reports, anywhere from 40 to 70 mile per hour winds. We've also had a little bit of damage. We have not officially had any tornadoes that created damage. There was a couple of tornado warnings yesterday, but thankfully none of those verified that. We may have had a water spout over the Indian River yesterday. I haven't checked to see if that was official from the National Hurricane Center. Later this afternoon and evening, winds in the central and North Florida area, 30 to 40, 50 miles an hour. Jacksonville, you're still under the direct impacts of Dorian, and so is Volusia County, Daytona Beach. But then the Carolinas, you'll be under the microscope here in the next 48 hours, with winds going up as we head into Thursday and into Friday. Here's the wind radii. So let me tell you what this means. So this is winds up to around 34 miles an hour. This is sustained winds up to about 73 miles an hour. And this is core sustained hurricane force winds. But the center, which is right about here, is that wind field of about 105. So this product does not show the eye wall, just shows hurricane winds and the general wind radii. But look at South Carolina. Right over around 1 o'clock on Thursday, getting hurricane force winds. Same thing for North Carolina. And then moving into possibly parts of Virginia with some decent winds. You guys too could be dealing with some power outages as we head into the next 2 to 3 days. All right, someone on Facebook was asking me about storm tracks. They were specifically asking about Hurricane Florence and Hugo. So I put them on here, let them do their tracks. I'm going to pull this out so you can see of all our scenarios. And again, I'm reticent to compare hurricanes because I think that's kind of dangerous, but folks ask, so I'm going to show you. I got to let this rotate all the way to the end of the loop, and you can see. So is this going to be a Hugo? Absolutely not. Is this going to be a Florence? No. Is it going to be a Floyd? No. Could it be similar in scope to Matthew? Yes. But I think at this stage in the game, we're still talking about a less intense hurricane, but I'm not ready to say that yet because we haven't seen how it's going to impact the Carolinas. So don't hold me to that. That's just a guide. Here was Hugo's path. This was a catastrophic hurricane for South Carolina. Here is Floyd right here. Large hurricane, 400 miles across in diameter. That thing was massive. Thankfully, it was the core wind field was offshore. Here's Matthew. Closest scenario to what we're seeing now, but again, not what I think we're going to be dealing with. And then here is Florence. Someone was asking about Florence. So here's Florence that sat over the Carolinas for about 2 to 3 days and dumped about 2 feet of rain. So I don't think that's going to be a scenario with this one. I'm not prepared to say that's a done deal, but I'm feeling confident based on the path and that trough and the acceleration we're anticipating in the next couple of days that we will be done with Dorian sooner than later. But before that happens, we've got a dangerous storm surge to deal with and also some winds. Okay, you guys, that's going to do it. It's about 9:30 in the morning. We'll have another update here soon. Make sure you catch us on our other social media pages if you want to get some updates. Mike Linden's here. He's updating our social media pages. You can get some, see some cool posts there. So check us out on Facebook. That's at facebook.com/myradar. Twitter is at myradarwx. Instagram at myradar, and of course we're right here on YouTube. Make sure you subscribe to our channel. It's been doing gangbusters since this tropical event started, since Dorian started. So we'd love for you guys to check us out on all of our pages. All right, that'll do it for now, you guys. I'm Chief Meteorologist Leslie Hudson from MyRadar. Have a great morning.
Continuing hurricane coverage on MyRadar.